Hello everyone, welcome back to Optimize FPL. We're going to be taking a look at the most selected players this season. I'm going to be ranking them from FPL Kings, double decent, decent, optional, and trash. I'm going to be starting from bottom to top, from the least selected players to the most selected players. Let's get into it. Okay, so the first player is Pickford, actually. He's at 6.1%. I would say that he is an optional player. I wouldn't recommend him too much. He's just like mediocre. The next player after him is Declan Rice. I would say that in FPL terms, he's absolute trash. He's a CDM that plays in a mid-table team, so I wouldn't really recommend him. De Gea at 5 million, I'd say he's slightly worse than Pickford, but also I'd say is optional. After him is Mings. Mings, again, another optional player at 4.5. He's actually pretty decent. I'd say he's probably better than the two of them. But Aston Villa's defense does look pretty good for the first couple game weeks, but I think that other players in Aston Villa's defense are just worth it in comparison to him. After that is Wilfred Zaha. I would actually say that Wilfred Zaha is pretty decent. Unfortunately, at the beginning of the season, he has pretty hard fixtures, but I think overall, in terms of the game, I think that he will end up becoming a decent option. But right now, he's just not worth the price tag of 7 million. There's just other better players that have better fixtures. You could probably rotate him and Coutinho quite well. Actually, probably bring in Coutinho for the first 4 game weeks, then maybe bring in Zaha afterwards. I haven't really looked at the fixtures too much, but I think that that would make a lot of sense. So up next is Dean Henderson. He plays for Nottingham Forest now, so please try to ignore the badge of United. But I would say that he rotates somewhere in this area of like decent optional. Nottingham Forest probably going to concede a lot of shots on him. I'd say he's probably just as good as De Gea, maybe slightly better, so I'll put him there. After that is Thiago Silva. Thiago Silva at 5.5 million. I just don't think it's worth it. I wouldn't say There's gonna be a lot of optional here, unfortunately. Optional, I say he's probably the worst optional. He's leaning towards trash just because, like, he's not actually a bad option. But you got Chilwell, James, you have Mendy. Actually, no, I'm gonna put him in trash. You got Chilwell at zero point 0.5 more. You got James at zero point 0.5 more, and you have Mendy at a zero point 0.5 less. He's just not worth it at all. I'd say that he is just absolutely a terrible pick for the game. After them is Sterling. I would say that Sterling is a very decent option, potentially even double decent. We'll put him here for now. Might have to move him later, but double decent. Especially moving to Chelsea, I think he's going to get a lot more game time. He's proven in the Premier League. He's an amazing player, and he's definitely someone to keep an eye out for. Unfortunately, that 10 million price point is quite hard to get into our teams, but it is what it is. I think he's a double decent player. Foden, definitely double decent. I'd say he's ahead of Sterling. I actually put Sterling down at decent for now. Foden is definitely a double decent player if he can get the minutes. So I think that he will get the minutes to start the season, but it's a wait and see really. Will he get the minutes? Will he won't? With Haaland coming in, I think it's a great option. He's got so many amazing players around him. He just can't. I just don't think he can fail. To be honest. Up next is Saint Maximin. I'm gonna put him in optional, probably at the end, very end of optional. It's just because Newcastle's fixtures are really, really hard. It's gonna be a hard time for them to start the season off. So I just don't think that he's really somebody you'd want to take in for the beginning of the season at least. But in the future, definitely an option. After them is Gabriel. Gabriel from Arsenal, just a little bit too expensive for my liking. Just considering you can get like Tomiyasu and Ben White for the same price, I'm just gonna put him at optional. I know that he's a little more nailed than Tomiyasu and Ben White, but I just don't think he's really worth the point, the 0.5 million more. And if you really want to nail the Arsenal defender, again, you look at the goalkeeper. You got Ramsdale in net, so definitely would consider him over them. Up next, Bernardo Silva actually is up next, and I'm going to put him into the trash category, unfortunately. I just think he's not a great FPL option. He just doesn't get that many goals or assists. He has terrible minutes rotation-wise. Surprisingly, he's more highly owned than Foden, which really doesn't make much sense to me, but it is what it is. Bernardo, I'm saying, is probably going to be more trash than a king. Up next, Jadon Sancho. Jadon Sancho actually looks pretty decent in the preseason. So do Man United as a whole. I would say that he's probably going to be indecent, probably just behind Sterling. Um, yeah, if Man United can get their shit together and they actually do really well, then you know what, Bob's your uncle, he's a great option. But especially at 7.5 million, because he's a slightly less than all the other 8 million players, so it'd be really easy to move to. But I just don't know if he's not worth it yet. We'll have to wait and see. I think that if Eric Ten Hag can get them playing well, Sancho could be a really good player. Up next, someone I was just chatting about was Ben White. Here he is. Let's pull him up. I'm gonna say he's a decent player, probably the very very end of decent. He'll be playing most games. I mean, William Saliba did have a good preseason game, but I just think Ben White is probably the main man there for the center backs, other than Gabriel. It doesn't really make much sense to pay 50 million for a backup center back. I know I can say that as a Tottenham fan, and we've just paid 60 million for Richarlison as a backup, but that's more for rotation amongst the front three, while Ben White was brought in to be a starter. Up next, Jacob Murphy at like 9% owned. It's probably because he's a 4.5 million option, but I'm gonna say trash. Probably he's definitely better than Declan Rice. Um, just not great though. I just don't. I like Newcastle have all this extra cash, all this money. Do we really think that Jacob Murphy or whatever his name is, Murphy is going to be starting any games? Like he's not going to get very much game time. I know he's supposed to be like a 4.5 bench fodder, probably for the players who are doing with three in the midfield because Andreas is a way better option than he is at 4.5 million. So I guess Jacob or Murphy is just like the second option. But I just wouldn't recommend him personally, even at a 4.5. There's got to be better options. Up next, Cucurella at 5 million. I don't think that he's very good. I'd say he's optional, very very end of optional. Just not a great option in my opinion. And maybe if he goes to Man City, it might change a little bit, but really not too much. Brighton's defense is good, but you can get Dunk at zero point 0.5 less. It's just not worth it in my opinion. 10% of you, not sure what you're doing with Cucurella on your team. Next up, we got Aaron Ramsdale. I think Aaron Ramsdale is a pretty decent option. I'd say he's better than all the goalkeepers we've seen so far. I'd say he's barely better than Mings. I'd probably say he's better than St. Maximan, so I'm going to put him in decent. You know what? He's a decent option. Arsenal have amazing fixtures to start the season. If you can't find a way to get an Arsenal defender into your team, maybe the goalkeeper is the best way to do it. He was a great pick last year, and he could be potentially a great pick again this year. So we'll have to wait and see what we can do with Arsenal. But yeah, I think he's pretty decent. I'd say he's just below Ben White just because of the price point, but not bad. Up next is Mitrovic. Again, I'm going to have to unfortunately put him in decent, probably at the very end of decent, just because his fixtures at the start of the season are so poor, and because his track record in the Premier League is absolutely abysmal. But every time he goes to the Championship, he absolutely smashes it, does amazing. Comes with the Premier League, gets like anywhere between 8 to like 13 goals, and then goes back down. So like maybe he'll change it up this year, maybe he won't, but I hope he does because I think he could be a great asset at 6.5 million. Yeah, let's hope and see what he can do. Kulusevski, I'm actually going to unfortunately have to put into the very man. I could really put him in the trash, but I would say probably optional, just because probably better than these two, maybe somewhere around here. I'd say that Kulusevski is there just because they brought in Richarlison. They brought him in for a reason. You know, he's probably going to share time with Kulusevski. Kulusevski could potentially be out of position on the right wing and play right wing back. So like we'll have to wait and see what they do with Kulusevski. It's unfortunate because I think he was a great pick last year, but this year I just don't see him being as good of a pick. Up next is Jarrod Bowen at 8.5 million. I'm going to put him in the double decent category. Unfortunately, West Ham's fixtures are quite hard to begin the season, and obviously it being 0.5 more than the other 8 million options makes him harder to get into your team. But he is a great option overall. In a good West Ham team, I think that he could potentially be a really good player this season. So we'll have to wait and see what we can do. Maybe bring him in when his fixtures get a little bit better, but we'll have to see and wait for that to happen. Up next is Martin Odegaard. I'm not sure. Like I've talked about the most optimized team, and Odegaard was in that team. Surprisingly, I'd say he's a decent option. Like he's somewhere around the Zaha mark, probably better than Zaha just because the opening fixtures. Odegaard is a better pick than Zaha. But other than that, I think that Zaha would be a better pick. Odegaard 6.5 million is a really really good option in my opinion. I just don't see him being like a game changer or anything like that. You know, he's usually the assist to the assist, if that makes sense. Like he's the pass before the assist. He's not really one to get many assists. He's not one to get many goals. So he's definitely someone that's just going to get you a lot of minutes, maybe some clean sheet points, but nothing too amazing. For a midfielder, you don't really want that. Up next, Mason Mount, 8 million. Oof, that's a hard one. I'm gonna put him in decent, probably just above Sterling. He's a little bit, he's like he probably equally as nailed as Sterling, but at 2 million less, the value is definitely there. And Chelsea do have some good opening fixtures, so I would recommend that Mount is probably a good pick over Sterling, but it's a really close one there. Onto a Man City player, Ruben Dias. I'm gonna put him into the decent category. Like I said before with City, they have a really good opening fixtures, but their rotation is a really scary thing. I think the defense has less of it just because there's not that many of them and they're really good. So Ruben Dias is probably going to start most games. He's a good option if you can't get João Cancelo. If you want to go down 1 million, I'd say he's probably a better option than Laporte at this point, just because it seems like Laporte might have gotten an injury or something like that. Is what I read in some reports. So Ruben Dias and potentially like Ederson compared to like Cancelo and a 4.5 could definitely be a better option for the long term. Now here's one that's really surprising and one that doesn't really make much sense. That he's only 10% owned. Andy Robertson, definitely double decent, if not an FPL king. He is fantastic value for money. I'm surprised he's so low owned. It's probably because people want Cancelo instead of him, but I just think Andy Robertson. He's going to get lots of assists. He potentially gets in on goals as well. He plays in a great defense. I say that he is definitely one to watch, especially at 10% owned. I feel like everybody underrates him just because they have Trent in their teams. They don't want to double up on the Liverpool defense, which does make a lot of sense, but he's definitely an amazing pick at 7 million. I'm surprised he's this low on the list, considering we still have so many players left to go. How is Andy Robertson this low? Up next on this list is James Ward-Prowse. I'd say he's in FPL terms. He is. I'd say. Well, we'll put him probably somewhere in the optional category because he is nailed. He'll play every game. Like he probably gets more. Like he'd probably be somewhere around there. James Ward-Prowse. Like he'll play every game, but he's not gonna. He's consistent. He's gonna get like one or twos, one or two, one two, and he's gonna get like a big score of like 14 points. And you never know when they're gonna come, and it could be against any team in the league because it's always like free kicks or corners, stuff like that, which are very unpredictable and very hard to like estimate when you're picking your team. So James Ward-Prowse, I'm gonna say optional, probably one I would avoid if I was you guys, but I know a lot of people do like him. I just don't think in FPL he's a great option. Up next is Darwin Núñez, and we don't really know much about Darwin, if I'm totally honest. Like he came in the Portuguese league, he's 9 million, which is kind of a lot. I would say he's probably at the very end of optional. Maybe somewhere like right here actually, more so, just because like you can get other Liverpool players. Actually, no. If I use that argument for Thiago Silva, I probably choose that argument for Darwin. That you can get other Liverpool players like Luiz and Jota for the same price or even less for in Luiz's case, and it's the same team. There's no real difference. Like why would you pick him over the other ones? So I'd say he's probably trash. It wouldn't be a good pick in my opinion, just because there's other players that are more nailed for the same team that would potentially get you more points. So it doesn't really make much sense. For me personally, I would not go for Darwin. I'd say he's probably a more trash pick. Up next, and please ignore the Spurs shirt, it's Gazaniga. Big Gaza, I mean, he's a 4.0 goalkeeper, so nothing too crazy there. Optional. He's not going to play for Fulham, from what I understand. Looking at their team, it just doesn't seem like he's going to start any games, so I wouldn't recommend him. But like as a 4.0 million goalkeeper, he's worth it. He's better than like someone like Forster or something like that because it doesn't make much sense. But it's actually moving on to him. It's Forster. He is probably one of the most trash picks I've seen. 10% owned. He's never going to play in that Tottenham team, and like you're taking away spots for Kane, Perisic, Lloris, Son, Kulusevski, eventually if he gets some more game time, Richarlison. There's so many good FPL picks at Tottenham that I don't fully understand why you'd waste one on a backup goalkeeper that's never going to play at 4 million. So he is definitely one of the worst picks on this list, if not the worst one. Doesn't make any sense to me why he's at 10% owned. I would not recommend it at all. Up next is Rashford. I would say Rashford is somewhere around this mark again, probably around there. I'd say slightly below Odegaard, probably like roughly the same. Just because Odegaard's fixtures are so much better that I'm going to say Odegaard's slightly better than Rashford. But I think if Rashford can get his place back on that right wing, while Sancho on the left wing, and someone like Martial up top, that would be an amazing front three that I think could do really good things at United. But we'll have to wait and see what they can do there because yeah, they have had some rough times in the past. Up next is Taylor, 4.5 million, Nottingham Forest forward. Just like Gazaniga, he might not play very much, but like he's good for bench rotation. He might get some points, so he's all right. He's got low enough ownership where he probably won't lose too much value, so it's decent. Moving on to another amazing player, I'd say double decent for sure, is Ben Chilwell. Ben Chilwell is a fantastic player. If he can stay fit, he's a great player. You could look at James as well and see them as like competitive. They're like competing for a spot in your team. But I see them both as like good options that could potentially both get in your team. So Ben Chilwell, Reece James, fantastic picks. I'd say definitely double decent. Vestergaard, I know I was saying that for like the rotation players it's optional, but I'm gonna put him in just above Darwin and trash. He's just not gonna ever play. Like I know I say that about the other players, but like even at 4 million, he's just not worth it. Like you can get other 4 million pound defenders that are going to play more, or then are definitely more likely to play than him. So I just don't really see the point in Vestergaard. Van Dijk up next, quite surprisingly high. I mean, like how is he higher percentage owned than Robertson? I don't fully understand. I'm going to put him at the end of decent just because he is nailed. He's a decent price. He's in a decent team, but like, actually, I'm going to put him somewhere down here actually, because it doesn't make any sense to me that he is picked more than Robertson. At 0.5 million more, Robertson is definitely a better pick than Van Dijk. All the stats show it. I don't fully understand it, but it is what it is. Raya, I'd say is decent. Definitely better than Ramsdale. Probably somewhere around here. Definitely the best goalkeeper we've had so far. Their opening fixtures are decent. Very good fixtures. He's unlikely to lose his spot. The only reason I probably didn't put him a little bit higher is because they did just sign another goalkeeper, which does give me a little bit of wary. Like, is he going to have the starting position nailed down? We'll have to wait and see what he can do there. Up next is Martinelli, and I think Martinelli is a great pick. I'm gonna put him at the very. No, we'll put him at the end of decent, just because he's not fully nailed. Emile Smith Rowe could potentially take some minutes off him, so I'd say he's just about decent. But at 6 million, is a great option. Somebody I'm definitely looking at the entire season. He's a great pick if he can nail down that left wing spot at Arsenal. Up next is Ederson. Definitely the best goalkeeper so far that we've had. Ederson, I'm going to say, is double decent. I think it makes a lot of sense because you're not really having too many Man City players in because they're so expensive. You probably just want like one defender, one midfielder or striker, and then one goalkeeper eventually. So that'd be Ederson. I think Ederson makes a lot of sense. 5.5. They brought him down a little bit less from last year. I think he's a great option. Makes a lot of sense, and I would probably recommend him honestly. The next player, the next goalkeeper, and the one that is actually on my list of the best goalkeeper for the beginning of the season is Sanchez. Um, yeah, I think Sanchez is definitely the goalkeeper to look for at the beginning of the season. He's got decent fixtures. Brighton have a great XG and XC, and I just think that he makes a lot of sense. You could potentially say that like Dunk is a better option than him because he has the goal threat and the same price. Um, but I don't know. I think Sanchez at the 4.5 million goalkeepers is the best 4.5 million goalkeeper in the game, and probably one of the best goalkeepers in the game. So yeah, maybe just slightly lower than Ederson. If you can afford Ederson, I think he's the best one. But Robert Sanchez definitely a double decent option. Definitely someone to look for in your teams. Up next, and we're getting a little bit more spicy. It's Kevin De Bruyne. I'm gonna put Kevin De Bruyne probably just above Jadon Sancho. I just think he's a little bit too much, like 12 million for De Bruyne. He might not play every single game because he's got obviously all the rotation that's happening. I feel like he gets injured a lot, so he needs to come off early. So he's someone that you don't really want to rely too much on. So he's someone that I definitely stay away from as much as possible. But I think he's definitely a decent option. If you wanted to pick him, I wouldn't fault you for it, but I just don't think he's the best one you could pick. Trippier from Newcastle, I think, is a very, very good pick. Um, if their fixtures were better to start the season, he'd be double decent, if not even potentially an FPL king. Probably not, but he definitely double decent. But because their fixtures are pretty poor to start the season off, I'd say somewhere around the middle to decent options. He's just like he could be amazing, but like I said, the fixtures are just hard. He's on set pieces though, so after I think it's game week 5 when they play Man City or maybe Liverpool, one of the two. After game week 5, definitely an option in our teams. Definitely someone I'm looking at. Okay, so up next is Tomiyasu. I think that he is definitely in the double decent category. Definitely the best Arsenal defender in the game, probably for the price. He's a right back. He's going to get a lot of attacking returns, hopefully, so definitely a fantastic pick. After him is Saka. Definitely the best 8 million player, other than Foden, I'd say. Probably somewhere around here. I think he's a great pick. I mean, unfortunately, like someone like Gabriel Jesus is probably a better pick than he is at 8 million. But that's something that you definitely consider. Bukayo Saka. If you want to not if you only want to have like one forward potentially, you want like Kane or Holland up top, and you want one forward, potentially getting someone like Saka in the midfield instead of Jesus up top could potentially be a viable option and something to consider. Up next is Nico Williams. He is a fantastic option, definitely double decent. Unfortunately, because he plays for Nottingham, so it's not like too amazing, but definitely double decent. 4.0 million player that's going to be on your bench for probably the most of the season, but he's gonna be highly owned, obviously. But Nottingham Forest, like they seem like a very attacking team for what I saw in the championship, the few games that I did watch, and I think that Nico Williams could do well at this stage. So they're not signing him for no reason. They're signing him to play him at 4 million. I think he's a good option. Allison, I'm gonna put him down in optional. I just don't really understand the point of Allison. I'll put him like somewhere here, right beside Van Dijk, because they don't really make sense to me. Why would you want Allison when you could pick someone like Robertson, Diaz, Like, you're just wasting a Liverpool spot on a goalkeeper. I just don't think it's worth it. Doesn't make any sense to me, and I wouldn't recommend it. So Alisson and optional, probably would avoid. Up next is Harry Kane, and in my personal opinion, Harry Kane goes into the FPL Kings. I know that this is probably biased because I am a Tottenham fan, but Harry Kane, season after season, continues to score goals, continues to do very, very well. I think at 11.5 million, they definitely underpriced him this season because last season I think they started him at 12 or even 12 and a half. I can't remember. Probably more likely 12. But I think that Harry Kane is a great option. I would definitely recommend him in any team that you guys are building. Up next, and very, very different than Kane, is Bruno Guimaraes. I just don't think Guimaraes is a good option. I think he's better than like Saint Maximin, but they're very, very close. I'd say he's just slightly pips him, um, just because he's slightly cheaper. But it really doesn't make much sense to me. He plays like CDM slash like CM. It'd be like picking like Conte or something like that, or Declan Rice. Doesn't make any sense to me. He's slightly more attacking than those two, and those are like big examples of like an outlier. But Bruno Guimaraes just doesn't make any sense to me, so I would definitely not recommend him. Coutinho for the first 4 game weeks is an absolutely fantastic player, very, very decent. I'd say slightly better than probably, yeah, I'd say he's probably around there. Coutinho for the first 4 game weeks, absolutely great pick, great fixtures, but they change very, very quickly. So if you're gonna bring him in, you gotta have a plan to get him out. Like I said, Zaha could be potentially a very good option to go to if you want to go for a sideways move, or if you have an extra 1 million in the bank, you could go up to someone like Mason Mount, Foden, and Saka, like we mentioned before. Up next, Pedro Neto. Definitely double decent for the price that he is. I think that he is a fantastic option. I know, and like Wolves fixtures are fantastic. He just makes a lot of sense. They've had a lot of problems up top. Um, Fabio Silva sounds like he's going on loan to Anderlecht, so it's even less competition for him up top. It'd be just like what, like Jimenez up top. It'd be Neto and Podence on the left and right. I mean, maybe if Adama stays, then that could potentially be a problem for him, but I don't think Adama is staying, so I think Neto is a great option at Wolves. They're going to need to have somebody up there attacking, and their fixtures are fantastic to start the season off, so definitely would recommend. Matty Cash. So I don't really like the Aston Villa defense. I think they're like decent. I probably put him at the very, very edge of decent. He's definitely better than Tyrone Mings, just because he gets a lot more attacking returns. But I just don't think he's a great option at 5 million. I think even someone like Trippier would be better, and you could just like rotate Trippier with one of the like the Arsenal players, for example, or something like that in the games that he has that are hard. Um, I just don't think it makes a lot of sense to bring in an Aston Villa's defender that you want to get rid of right away in the first 4 game weeks. It makes more sense for an attacker, in my opinion. I'm not sure if that's just a little bit of bias because I prefer attackers over defenders, but definitely something to consider there. I'm not sure about Matty Cass. Up next to the 4.5s is Andreas. He is double decent, probably just behind Robertson. For 4.5 million, you now have a Fulham center attacking mid who is on most set pieces. That's just a fantastic pick. Like, there's nothing two ways about it. He's going to be a great bench option. He's going to play probably every single week. He makes the most sense. If you're not picking him in your team, I'm not sure what you're doing because he is a fantastic option. And unless you're playing five in the middle, but again, even with five in the middle, you probably should just be playing him because he's such a good option. So definitely get him in your team. Up next, and another fantastic goalkeeper option who's going to be very, very hard to put in this team or in this list is Mendy. I'm going to put him in the double decent behind Robert Sanchez and Ederson. Just because I think that if you're going to pick a Chelsea defender or like somewhere in the back line, you'd probably want Chilwell or Reece James. But if you can't afford those two, Mendy in net is a fantastic option. I would recommend him for sure. Up next is Son. I mean, Son is definitely an FPL royalty, but just because he's at 12 million now, I'd say he's just about in the double decent, somewhere between double decent and decent. Um, like obviously, like it's easy to say that Kane makes a lot more sense than Son, but I just think because of the price point, because of the positions, Kane is a much better option than Son this year. He's on penalties as well, which he always has been, so that doesn't really change much. But I just think that like Kane didn't really start the season well last season because of Nuno and because he didn't want to be there. He wanted to go to Man City, which makes sense. Like fair enough, they're an amazing team and they're going to pay you way more money. So like why wouldn't you want to go there? But this season coming up, Conte has a lot more time with the team. I think Kane is going to get a lot more like invested into it. I think he's going to get a lot more goals, and he's probably if anybody's assisting Son, it's going to be Kane. And I mean, obviously it's vice versa, but I just think that Kane is just the better option, and that's why he's in the FPL Kings category. Sam Greenwood at almost 30% owned. I'm putting him into the trash, and the reason I'm putting him in the trash is because he's so highly owned, people are going to start moving him out of their teams, and he's going to fall in value very, very quickly. If he does not get some game time off of the bench, which I don't think he will too much, honestly, he will lose value very quickly, and that is just something you don't want in your bench fodder. Like, Sam Greenwood is probably third on everybody's bench, right? If you do have him, he's probably third on the bench. He's going to lose value. You don't want that. You want someone who's going to keep their value at 4.5 million because it just hurts the rest of your team if that happens, right? Like later on in the season, when you're looking for that point 0.1, 0.2 million, you're going to think, oh man, I can't believe I lost all that because I kept this Leeds forward that doesn't even play. It doesn't make sense to me. You want to like if you're going to pick a 4.5 million forward, I would not pick one that has a high ownership just because that it could hurt your overall score if they're not going to play. So like Andres, for example, is 4.5. He's highly owned, but he's going to play every single week. He's going to play every single week in that Fulham team. So and same with Nico Williams at 4.0. He's going to play every single week in that Forest defense. They make sense as picks. I think Sam Greenwood is a bad pick just because of how high his ownership is and because of how little I think he's going to play. Luis Diaz, I'd say he is a double decent for sure. I'd say he's just behind Foden in my opinion. I think those two really are battling out for who's the best 8 million midfielder. Yeah, obviously at 30% owned, people are definitely agreeing with me that he is a very, very good option. And he is a good option. With Mane gone, he's got a lot more time on that left wing, less likely to be rotated. I think he's a great option this season. Coming up on Perisic, now obviously I want to believe that he's going to be an amazing asset, but I honestly think he's probably just going to be somewhere in the decent category, maybe just behind like, probably behind like Zaha and all of them. Because like the problem with Perisic is he hasn't played any preseason games, he hasn't done anything yet at Tottenham. I worry that he's going to be rotated a lot. There's a lot of left backs and right backs now. Even Lucas Moura is talking about playing right wing back. So I mean, like, there's just like so much competition at those wing back spots in the Tottenham team that I just don't think that at 5.5 million he's going to be a good option that we all thought he was going to be when he first signed. I was super excited when he first signed, but I think that he's going to be less and less of a good option the more I think about it, and the closer I get to game week 1, I think that he's not going to be in my team. Reece James, double decent. I would say that he is just right in front of Chilwell in my opinion. He's a great option, fantastic player. Definitely someone to keep in your team. If you're going to pick someone from Chelsea, I think he's slightly better than Chilwell, but both of them together are fantastic options. Cancelo, another one for the FPL Kings. He is in every single one of my drafts. He's definitely going to be in my team. I think he's a fantastic option. He's a Man City defender who plays left and right back, who plays almost 90 minutes every single game. Like, he's just, what else? What more do you want from him, you know? Surprisingly, up next is Trent Alexander-Arnold. You'd think that he would be a lot higher. He's definitely going to be the FPL king, probably the main one, if not Salah. Salah is actually up next, so I'll just put him right in front of him. These two players are just in every single team I make. They're 100% nailed. I don't see why anyone would not go with them. The fact that they're only 59 and 55% owned makes no sense to me. They should be like 60 to 70% owned. So looking to the people who are 60% owned plus is Gabriel Jesus. I think he's a good option. I'd say he's definitely better than Saka. Probably somewhere around here. I think he's a good option. From what he did in preseason, he looks like he's a really, really good option. I would definitely recommend him for your teams. Yeah, I'm not really sure what else you do without him, like what other player you go for. Maybe like Wilson as someone that I considered at one point, but their fixtures just aren't good enough, Newcastle, so I wouldn't recommend him. I think if you're going to pick an Arsenal forward, Jesus is the one you got to pick. And last but certainly not least is Erling Haaland at 61% owned, which is absolutely ridiculous. It makes a lot of sense, but also doesn't make a lot of sense. He's a generational talent. He's new to the league, so everyone's really excited to see what he can do. And he does start off pretty fast from what we saw at his Dortmund days, but like, I worry about him actually starting. I feel like I've read reports that the reason he picked Man City is because like he's going to be able to rest more often in that City team than he was able to at Dortmund. Less likely to get injured, but also less likely to start. So like, I just that's something I worry about. Maybe he gets taken off early and doesn't play full 90 minutes, which we want in our forwards. So for those reasons in particular, I'm going to put him just behind Kane and the FPL Kings category. I'm also going to put Robertson up there now, actually, now that I've looked at the list. I think he just deserves it. So this is my tier list for the most owned players in FPL this season. I think that this makes a lot of sense. I think this is great overall. I would definitely recommend all the players in Double Decent and FPL Kings. Decent is players you look at and you think about, and they could be like some punts as well because like obviously most of them have lower ownership than the ones in Double Decent and FPL Kings. But yeah, that's it. Thanks everybody for watching. I just wanted to give a quick PSA that I'm doing the Pizza Premier League. Last season I ended up winning it after Mocha Frappe 11 decided to post on Reddit that they were going to do this fun league. So the info is in the description. Please feel free to join. It's completely free. And if you win either the cup or the league, I'm going to be sending you $25 worth of free pizza. So thanks so much. Enjoy, and I hope everyone has a good season. Cheers, everybody.